közgazdász, akinek a jó és a rossz közgazdaságtan, Economics of Good and Evil című könyvének az apropóján fogunk ma este beszélgetni. És a beszélgető partnerünk lesz még Budaközi Balázs, aki a Tudományos Akadémia Közgazdaságtani Intézetének a kutatója. A beszélgetés angolul fog zajlani, úgyhogy aki kényelmesebben érzi magát, hogyha magyarul hallgatja, az talál fejhallgatókat a bejárat mellett. De mielőtt elkezdjük, megkérem Szűcs Tamást, aki az Európai Bizottság képviseletének a vezetője, hogy egy pár szóban nyissa meg az eseményt.
Köszönöm szépen, tényleg csak pár szót mondanék. Először is szeretettel és tisztelettel üdvözlöm valamennyi vendégünket, külön nagykövetasszonyt, Csehország nagykövetét, aki megtisztelte a rendezvényt jelenlétével, és természetesen a főszereplő Tomáš Sedlácseket. Nem gondolt egyikünk sem, hogy éppen Tamás napon kerül egyébként sor erre a rendezvényre. Mind a ketten Tamások vagyunk, úgyhogy ez egy külön ünnepi alkalom ebből a szempontból. Nagyon örülök, hogy itt az Európa Pontban megint telt ház van, szerencsére mostanára már szokásossá vált, és azt gondolom, hogy egy nagyon izgalmas vita elé nézünk, nagyon fontos téma, eredeti feldolgozásban. Elég sok komoly és súlyos témával foglalkozik manapság mind a magyar, mind a nemzetközi média az európai integrációval kapcsolatban. Éppen ma jöttek ki az újabb bizottsági vélemények, ajánlások Magyarországgal kapcsolatban. Szerintem nagyon jó, hogy egy olyan témával tudunk most foglalkozni, aminek ehhez semmi köze nincsen, viszont nagyon érdekfeszítő, és egy eredeti előadót tudunk meghallgatni, aki nem csak nálunk, hanem a Yale Egyetemen, a Károly Egyetemen Haber elnök tanácsadójaként működött, tehát azt hiszem, hogy minden szempontból egy érdekes estének nézünk elébe. Köszönöm szépen!
So let me change to English and I'll ask Tomáš to start with a short presentation about his approach and his book that we talk about tonight. Tomáš, I mean the head of the representation, Tomáš, already listed some of the titles that Tomáš, the author Tomáš, has. So I won't go into details in his CV, but yeah, he's a former advisor to President Havel, and he's a chief strategist of the CSOB, a major Czech bank. He's also a Yale fellow and a member of the Czech National Advisory Committee or Council, and many more, I'm sure, but that's probably enough. So he'll start with a short presentation and we'll have a discussion after that, and there will be opportunity for questions at the end of the discussion, so be patient until then.
So thank you very much for having me here tonight, and I want to do maybe 15-20 minutes as an introduction, and then I'll be very happy to dive into a debate of what's happening today or whatever interests you. Okay, well, let's start with what I think is wrong. Is there's a wrong diagnosis of what's happening. What you hear in the media all the time, that the economy is depressed and that's the problem. I think this is a wrong diagnosis. We're not depressed, we are manic depressed. And there's a huge difference between the two. If a depressed patient is getting his mood back, this is good news. If a manic depressive patient is getting his or her mood back, this is not in itself good news, because you might revert back into the mania. Economics has a tendency to overdo its happy moods into manias. In fact, if you read the description or definition of mania, you have overly optimistic expectations of the current and future situation. You think everything's going to be better and better and better. You spend much more money. This is very typical of manic people. They just spend ridiculous amounts of money over things that they don't need or they feel they need. And the fourth, also very important thing, is that in these manic periods, these people who suffer from bipolar disorder are very creative and very efficient. And this is our problem. So, you know, if you look on Greece, let's say, okay, that's a depressed economy. If I simplify this, if Greek people work double as much as they do, they wouldn't have a problem. Okay, let's take this simplified reading that we get from the newspaper all the time and let's apply it to Ireland. There, it's a typical manic problem. If the Irish, especially bankers, worked half the time than they work, they wouldn't have a problem. And this is also true of United States. So curing just the depression with antidepressives, which is the only thing that we can do, is harmful if you keep feeding the patient antidepressives during his manic periods. Well, because I have a flip chart, so I will flip it and I will chart it. Let's actually try to take a longer view and let's have a look on the very first business cycle in the history of mankind. Now we are suffering the most recent one, and we should always look on the things from the perspective of the whole cycle. Now, who can recall the oldest business cycle ever in the written history of mankind? It's a story that you all know. Nile? Okay, that's very close. So maybe you can remember it. So it has to do something with Egypt. Joseph, yes. Joseph and the amazing multicolor dream coat. Okay, so the story, you know this is Genesis 41. This is Bible. You don't expect macroeconomic debates in the Bible, but yet it's full of them. And it's just a matter of connecting the two, which I think few people do. Okay, so the story, as you know, of course, from your childhood, Pharaoh has a dream about 7 fat cows. You know, I always have to be careful not to look on anybody. 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows, and he doesn't know what to make of it. So he calls Joseph. Now Joseph is a prophet, and Joseph says, "Congratulations, Pharaoh! You just had the first macroeconomic prediction 14 years ahead of time. Here you would have grain. Today we would do GDP, and this is simply time." So, it's quite simple, and Pharaoh says, "Thank you very much. Now give me a macroeconomic advice what to do with the business cycle, because these things have been happening from time immemorial." And Joseph says, because Joseph is a good student of Keynes, so Joseph gives him a Keynesian advice, and he says, in the good years, do not eat everything that grows. In other words, decrease your consumption. Save, this is a strange word. When I lecture this to Americans, I always say, look it up in Wikipedia. There used to be a time, before you actually bought something, you went through this purgatory of decreased consumption because you wanted to buy a car or a laptop. So for some time, you couldn't go to movies. You remember when we were young, we used to do that too. And then, take the energy that you have stored and invest it. Now, this word we already know very well, so there's no need to explain it. In other words, work with time energy, take it from here and put it here so that you decrease the amplitude of a business cycle. And of course, this is what they did, and the story is sort of a happy end for Egypt, not a very happy end for everybody else. Now, first, there are many lessons that you can draw from this, but I only want to take the most important. It is not the role of economists to increase GDP. This is what we think today. In fact, if you actually follow this closely, the role of an economist is to decrease GDP. And then increase it here. And now, let's fast forward some 3,000 or 4,000 years. Today, America alone produces about 70,000 economists who get trained in economics for 3 or more years. And we do this, 5 hours or 8 hours a day, only to come up with, we also had 7 very good years. Those were bracketed by 2 very important events. One was September 11, and the other one was September 15. This is, of course, the Twin Tower attack, and this is the collapse of Lehman Brothers. This is, of course, a pure coincidence. It's just that it exactly works out to 7 years, during which our civilization, I mean the Western civilization, including the rest of the world, had very strong period of growth. What did we do? We did this. Largely. Why? Because we thought it's going to go like this forever, so this is actually possible. If you remember, Alan Greenspan was once credited for inventing a non-cyclical economy. We thought that this rhythm that has been here with us for thousands and thousands of years literally is over, and we now know, because we're very clever, because we know how to compute things that nobody understands, including the economists. So we basically we're doing this. So it's, you know, our macroeconomic policy cannot be properly called Keynesian. Our macroeconomic policy is left of Keynes. Keynes would be, from today's perspective, a right-winger, almost an extreme right-winger, because he would be telling here to us to run budget surpluses, not budget deficits. And people would scream at him for you're slowing down the economy, this is extremely conservative, this is extremely cruel. So I call it bastard Keynesianism. This is what we are doing today. We took half of the sentence, it's okay to run deficits, and we forgot the other, if you run surpluses in the good times. So we only took half of it, we married it with populism, and what we got is a wonderful, much more simpler, run deficits all the time. This debate, I think, is over. The Keynesian debate which we had, of course you can here see that Keynes didn't do anything else except for applying this Joseph story in a little bit more technical manner. The debate whether we should stimulate the economy by deficits, which has been over, and, you know, with us for the last 80 or 90 years, is over. Why? Because we simply have run out of that drug. Deficit you can look at as a drug that increases your energy. Now there is no more of that drug left. It ran out in this country, it ran out in Greece, it ran out in Ireland. It is running out even in the United States of America and even in Germany. The most stable countries, they can no longer feed the economy with deficits. Even they are being threatened by actually decreases of rating, and we all realize we only have a couple of more years with antidepressants, and then we need to get rid of the antidepressants. The way it works is, so this is sort of fiscal policy. You know that the government, we have two hands with which we can sort of influence, not direct, but influence the economy. The one is monetary policy, and the other one is fiscal policy. So this is an example of fiscal policy, but you could tell the same story in monetary policy. For those of you who are not economists, well, in fact, I should correct myself. You know, Milton Friedman once said, "We are all Keynesians now." I would, if I may, add to Milton Friedman, and today I would say nobody's an economist anymore. So monetary policy, this is very simplified, but it serves the purpose, is the monopoly of printing money. Extremely simplified, but at the end of the day it works. Fiscal policy is a monopoly of printing debt. Basically, that's sort of all there is to it. Both of these things are extremely powerful and very tempting, and they even have the tendency to look very, as if they create freedom and possibilities in the beginning, but at the end of the day, they enslave. This is also interesting to notice because in Greek, which is the language of the New Testament, as you know, the word debt and the word sin are synonyms. So the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 14 should be literally translated, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us." And this is also true in German, this is also true in Latin. For those of you who go to masses, you remember "Demini nos debita nostra." Forgive us our debits. Forgive us our debits cards. So this is actually the prayer of many Wall Street bankers, you know, forgive us our debts as we don't forgive those who are indebted to us. Both of these things behave similarly like the Ring of Power from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. The trilogy is called The Lord of the Ring, or The Lord of the Rings. Who is the Lord of the Rings? Who is the CEO of the ring? Well, Sauron isn't really. He's looking for it. He doesn't own it. The ownership is disjointed. He wants to control it, but he can't. This is the whole plot. Who controls the ring? The ring itself, exactly. The ring is what in psychoanalysis is called object petit a. It is something that was created to serve, blah, blah, blah. It ends up mastering you. Like, for example, the robots in Matrix. We created the robots to serve us, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, we are slaves of the robots. And you see this in many, many archetypes, warning us that this is a propensity of certain things that look servant-like in the beginning, but then they rebel, they get a life of their own, and the ring has a will of its own. This is why none of the wise ever touch the ring. So, let's start with Gandalf, never touched the ring, never even close to it. Aragorn, Galadriel, even Elrond never touched the ring. These are, of course, mythical figures with very strong willpower, but they were afraid to touch the ring. Why? Because they knew that it's so tempting, you can do anything with it, that it ends up enslaving you. So, the Council of Elrond decided that the ring must be destroyed. This is what we did with monetary policy. We took it out from politics. We took it, I would even go as far as to say we took it out of democracy, and we gave it to national banks. That was the first step. And the second step is European national bank, where there is no influence of politicians whatsoever. So politicians can no longer use this power to solve whatever problems they have. That's why we don't have a problem with inflation. That's why we don't have problems with devaluation and trade wars. Now the question, as we speak, is what should we do with fiscal policy? Should we also destroy it and give it to, I don't know, European body or independent body, or should we put in our constitution that we no longer will use this? Whatever the solution is, the attempt is either we ban both of these hands because they end up enslaving you. I mean, if you read the newspapers, today's newspapers, and you substitute these two words, you really end up with the gospel. You know, the Greeks were falling under the weight of their debt or sin. They no longer could carry the weight of their own debts, sins, and they needed a